All right, good evening, everyone. I'll call the committee of the whole meeting to order at 5 p.m. The territorial acknowledgement. In the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge with respect the history and living culture of the Shinnebec, the people of Three Fires known as the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi Nation, who have inhabited this land from time immemorial. We recognize that these lands are the territories of the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash, collectively known as the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, the keepers of this land. Georgia Bluffs is located on lands encompassed by treaties 45.5, 67, 72, 82, and 93. We reflect on our role as treaty people and the need to live in respect and peace and show respect to the first peoples who inhabited these lands and waters. Adoption of the agenda. Does any member have an urgent addition to the agenda? Not seeing one. I need a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda as presented. Councillor Coburn, Councillor Thompson, discussion. I'll call the vote. All those in favor? That is carried. Declaration of pecuniary interest. Does any member have a pecuniary interest to declare? Not seeing one. If you do at any time, you can declare at that time. Announcements. Does any member wish to make an announcement? Mayor Carlton.
I would just suggest everybody be aware that this Saturday is the Kemble Maple Tour taking place starting at 9 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon, I think, and sausage and pancakes and everything at the church. And then the tour will go from there with, I'm going to turn to staff for what all is happening at the community center.
So through you, Mayor Carlton, we've got, there's 3 participating farms. We did lose one, unfortunately, who couldn't open because of the ice storm. They had too much damage, but there's 3 participating farms you can tour around. As you say, breakfast at the United Church, and then a family fun fair on at the Kemble Arena, inflatable balls and games, face painting, balloon modelling, and a petting zoo. Some miniature ponies and goats. Various other things that will be coming along on the day. So, and there'll be a handful of staff along. There's also hot dogs and hot drinks, I believe, at the arena as well during the day.
Perfect. Hopefully some good weather coming their way. Any other announcements to be made? Not seeing any. Okay, thank you. Public participation, 6.1 presentations. Any person who wishes to make a presentation to council must register with the clerk within 7 days in advance of the scheduled meeting. To register, you can complete the online delegation form, www.georgiabluffs.ca/delegations, or you can call the clerk's office at 519-376-2729, extension 601, and we have none for tonight. And 6.2, delegations on the agenda items. Any person who wishes to appear before council regarding an item on the agenda must register with the clerk's office. To register, you can complete the online delegation form, www.georgiabluffs.ca/delegations, or call the clerk's office at 519-376-2729, extension 601, or register in council chambers with the clerk prior to the meeting starting at 5 p.m. Public inquiries. Any person who wishes to appear before council with a question or inquiry must register with the clerk's office. To register, you can complete the online delegation form, www.georgiabluffs.ca/delegations, or call the clerk's office at 519-376-2729, extension 601, or register in council chambers with the clerk prior to the meeting starting at 5 p.m. All right, the first report for the night is 7.1, Office of the CAO. 7.1.1, CAO 02, or CAO 2025-018, public engagement on waste collection services. And the recommendation reads that report CAO 2025-018 be received for information. Put her on the floor. Need a mover and a seconder. Councilor Winters, Councilor Day, discussion. See any further discussion? Niall.
So good evening, members of council, through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle. I will keep my comments on this one very brief because I have a fairly extensive presentation associated to the next report, which will cover some of the elements within here. But we provide this report as a background piece of information to support the conversation we will be having following the next report in regards to the waste management tender, so the RFP process. So this is really just a summary of the touch points we've had with community in regards to waste management services over the last 12 to 18 months or thereabouts, that we've helped collect in part towards this and in part towards other processes and analysis of some of the data that we're holding. So it's really a background report to help provide some information in regards to the conversation that's about to come.
Thank you for that. Questions from council on the first report? I am not saying anything. I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor? That is carried. All right, 7.1.2 CAO 2025-019, award of the RFP for household waste collection services. Recommendation reads that council direct staff to award RFP 2025-01 being a request for proposal for waste collection services to Company B as part of the report CAO 2025-019, and that council direct staff to enter into detailed contract negotiations with Company B to develop and draft contract for services that will be delivered curbside automated collections of waste using carts on a bi-weekly basis with weekly organics collection scenario 4, and that council direct staff to include the annual large item collection service scenario 5 with the contract discussions, and that staff bring a draft contract back for council for review prior to the signing, and that staff extend the option to participate in the contract with the township absorbing all the waste disposal fees with the block 75 condos at Cobble Beach, and that the contract for services be started no later than June 1st of 2026. I need a mover and a seconder to put it on the floor. Councilor Coburn, Councilor Day, discussion. Now, you're up again.
So, good evening. Through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, members of council, members of the public that may be watching. There is a presentation associated with your agenda package, and I believe it will come up on the screen in due course. I will start going through the slides in front of me. I'll tell you when I've advanced to the next slide. So if you're following along, you can, and we'll catch up with presentation on the screen as soon as we can. Unless it's imminent.
It says it's password protected.
Oh, I didn't do that. It's in the agenda package as well.
Yep, got it.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the waste management RFP process. And it's a lengthy report, and I am going to take a few minutes to walk through some of the background piece, because obviously the numbers are quite big, and this is a very significant service which we deliver to residents across the township. And we are talking about service provision for the next few years. So I think it's probably one of those ones where it's worth spending a little bit of time to go through. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the legislative context for this. And sometimes it feels like legislation happens very quick. We see things happening today that none of us expected when we woke up this morning, for sure. But this is the opposite of that. This is a slow burning change, legislative change that has been rolling out since 2016 or before 2016. So in 2016, there were two acts passed, the Circular Recovery Act and the Waste Diversion Transition Act. They were passed at the same time, bundled up. We're on the first slide. They were bundled together. So the Circular Recovery Act, both acts, pieces of legislation, seek to reduce the amount of waste that's collected, and then not only reduce the amount that's collected, but reduce the amount that ends up in a landfill. And so the Circular Recovery Act was really designed to try and stop stuff from getting to landfill by reusing it and avoiding it becoming a waste product in the first instance. So the circular economy is where material gets reused. That's been slowly transitioned into being through a number of regulations that have followed since. So the regulations that followed on from this were in 2019, tyres became part of the producer responsible framework. And the point of the producer responsible framework is that people that produce waste now need to pay for that waste to not go back into a landfill. So the producers of tyres have to pay for the tyres to be recycled at the end of their life. And you see that when you buy a set of tyres, there's a disposal fee that's associated to the tyres, and there's one when you change them out on your vehicles. Those disposal costs are being collected by the producer to help the province offset the cost of recycling the tyres. So tyres moved in 2019, single-use batteries moved in 2020, electronic items and many household hazardous projects moved over into the producer responsible framework in 2021. The next one, which was very, very significant, is the blue box transition. And the blue box transition has happened over 3 years. This is the last year of the transitional phase. And in the 1st of January 2026, the blue box program will transition to the producer responsible framework in its entirety, with the province leading the collection of blue box materials paid for by producers. The Waste Diversion Act, Waste Diversion Transition Act, next slide, also came to be in 2016, and the idea is to get Ontario to as close to zero waste as possible, with a target of 80% diverted away from landfills by 2050. There are lots of focuses within this, and the producer responsible framework is one of the early ones, but there are other things in there. Of particular note for us through the course of this evening is household organic waste. Household organic waste makes up about 46% of the non-recycled waste stream from households at this point in time. And so there was a focus in this Diversion Act to try and limit the amount of household organic waste that goes to landfill. We've done this through a number of strategies which have largely focused on urban area transition to date. There is another strategy which is supposed to be launched in 2027, so in a couple of years' time, to implement additional measures at reducing waste going to landfill. The drivers for this particular act were largely to reduce the GHG emissions, both at the point of landfill and the GHG emissions in respect to transportation of waste around the province, and indeed out of province. We have seen.
Councillor
If I may, through you, Chair, just out of curiosity, is that 5% reduction in waste produced due to something in particular, or?
No, so the 5% reduction that we've seen is just to our household waste stream. So we're excluding the recycling, which makes up, we don't know exactly, but we think it's about 25% is being diverted through the blue box. That 5% is in the remaining household waste that's going. There's been no effort by the township to reduce that waste. So we can't pat ourselves on the back and say we did an awesome job. That's an awesome job at the benefit of our residents to reduce that waste. We do track the total tonnage, and the total tonnage has dropped by 5% despite population increase. So we are sending less. So we've been transitioning waste. Waste has been transitioning since at least 2016. As waste management practices have evolved and changed, the stream has become more complex. We used to take everything out in a single bag or single bin. It went to a single hole in the ground in a single vehicle, and it was buried. It was a very streamlined process. Even putting stuff in the ground is way more complex than it ever was, with liners and stormwater management and gas management and the various different things. So as we are seeing this transition in waste, the costs associated to waste are also going up quite significantly. So as the demand goes, as a changing waste landscape goes, costs change, complexity increases. We have for a number of years relied on external contracting companies to collect our waste. They used to take it to our own landfill. Now they take it to landfills outside of the township. Before the current contract, so pre-2019, we had two providers for our waste collection services. Bruce Waste used to collect our household waste and took that to our own landfill site. Miller Waste collected the recycling and took that to their processing depot and shipped it on from there. Our landfill site closed in 2017 or thereabouts. And in 2020, we put together a tender for looking for alternative ways of dealing with our waste. The reason that the tender was released was because our two existing contractors had seen significant upward price pressures, and so there was a tender process rather than a contract extension process at that point in time. Council elected to go for a combined service offered by Waste Management at that point in time, and the contract value for that was about $502,000. That was collecting both household waste and the recycling. It was a combined contract. Waste Management had it for 5 years, and over that 5-year term, it offered savings over the two other potential options that had been put forward of around about $750,000. The existing service that we have today as a township is a combined collection service. That means what we have is, largely speaking, single trucks with two compartments go around the township on each day, each collection day. One compartment on the truck is used for collecting recycling materials, which are blended, they're mixed, they're not separated by residents. So cardboard, paper, steel, tin, aluminium, cardboard all goes into a single side of the vehicle. It gets manually sorted at the depot. And on the other side of the truck, we have a household waste compartment. And so the combined collection is they take both and they then take them away and dispose of them. Our household waste goes to a landfill further to our south, and the recycling is packaged and produced as a product to be sold on into the recycling marketplace. Leaf and yard waste is currently supported by a shared service agreement with Owen Sound, as is hazardous waste, where residents can take their items to Owen Sound to be recycled. And large items and other waste materials such as construction DIY materials is commercially managed by Miller Waste in Owen Sound under a user fee basis. We collect waste from around about 5,585 properties. That's the 2024 number, so a little bit more than that today. We may just be over the 5,600 number. And we currently collect from all residential households, including households on some private roads and some seasonal roads. We collect a household amount of garbage from commercial properties, from institutional properties and industrial properties, i.e. if a church puts out recycling of a reasonable amount, we will collect it from the church. If a commercial property on the Tom subdivision puts out a bag of a sort of typical amount of household garbage, we would collect that as well. There are some changes to collection that are coming in the future, and some of those changes may be changes which council want to replicate in terms of our waste collection. So, for example, the blue box post-January will no longer be offered to commercial, institutional or industrial properties, ICI properties, and it will no longer be available to farm properties for the farming portion of the business. It will still be available to farm properties for the residential portion of the property. We have a shared contract with a single other entity, and that's the Cobble Beach Block 75 Condominium Corporation. They pay a service fee to our provider of services. That's a contract, it's a discussion between the condo board and the provider. We blend the waste in our trucks and we pay for the disposal of waste. The residents are currently buying bag tags to offset the cost of the waste disposal. Our RFP process has allowed for that service to be considered on a go-forward basis at the agreement of the condo corporation. In 2025, our costs are around $782,000 in total. It's made up of our collection cost for our household waste of $384,750, which is the service fee, and $137,000, which is our anticipated household waste disposal fee. There's about $261,000 we pay in collection costs for the recycling. There are no costs associated with recycling disposal because it is a marketable product which is sold on into the recycling stream. In 2025, we expect to generate some revenue to offset those costs. We're expecting to make $623,000 of revenue back to the tax base. That's $335,000 estimated from bag tag sales, and $288,000 of that is through our agreement with CMO. Previously, that money would have come from Stewardship Ontario. Through the transition, we are now being paid to deliver blue box services, and we get the $288,000 from that.
The questions there for now.
Thank you. Just a question about what it costs us for all of that. Have we factored in what we pay for the leaf and yard waste in Owen Sound and participating in the hazardous waste day? Is that included? No.
I haven't included that in these figures. Because largely we're not necessarily thinking about changing that too much, but we pay $25,000-ish. I can't remember the exact number. It's about $25,000 for access to the leaf and yard waste site. Hazardous waste, I cannot remember the cost, and there is some user revenue that comes in from that as well. Also, the balance is funded from the property tax basis. So what do we already know is changing? We know that through 2024 and 2025, we have been providing blue box services ourselves under contract to the province. So we have had a contract relationship with the province. We have been delivering that contract through our contract with Waste Management Services through that transition to the producer responsible collection services. We know that as of the beginning of next year, that service is transitioning fully to the province. They have full responsibility for the blue box collection and recycling from 2026 onwards. That's happening through CMO. CMO, Circular Materials Ontario, operate across the whole of Canada, and indeed I think it's Circular Materials BC that operate in BC. CMO in Ontario have issued multiple contracts over the last 2 years for blue box collection contracts. They're not doing it themselves, they're subcontracting it out to a number of existing companies. There have been 2 tenders awarded in our area. The first tender was for the collection for the transfer site for all blue box materials. So all blue box materials from Region 17, where we are, which includes all of Grey and most of Bruce counties, Region 17, all blue box materials are now taken, regardless of who's collecting them. They are all sorted and processed at Waste Management site in Mount Forest. They won the contract for being a transfer station for blue box materials. The second contract that was issued and has been awarded in Region 17 is for the collection of the blue box material. That has also been awarded to Waste Management through that tendering process. So from January 2026, Waste Management are responsible for both the collection in Region 17 and the processing of recycling materials in our area. Waste Management have told us that they are moving to a cart-based system in 2026, and so our residents will be seeing their blue box materials collected by an automated sidearm loading vehicle from a wheeled cart with a hinged lid on top of it. It will continue to be a blended process, so a single cart into which all your steel, aluminium foil, plastic, paper, cardboard will go, and it will be collected away in a truck. We will not have, and I don't think this can be reinforced enough, every opportunity I get a chance to say this in front of members of the public and residents, we will no longer have a role to play in blue box recycling from January 2026. I know we're still going to get a lot of calls, we're going to be fielding a lot of questions, but we have no influence over that service from January 2026. It's fully outside of our control from that time. So our RFP process, we're going to have a quick flick through some of the key processes we had from public engagement. We decided, because this is a big service, it's worth having some input from the public to understand where the pain points, pressure points are, the things that they like, the things they don't like are. So generally, we found that people are neutral to happy with existing services. There is an interest, a strong interest in some organic collection, and there is interest particularly in pairing organic collections and alternative waste collection frequencies. So there is some interest in exploring those sorts of options. Many folks are, as I say, happy with the existing collections that they get. They find them reliable, regular, routine, and they haven't had problems. However, there is an exact flip side to that coin, is that there are some residents who have very, very strong feelings of having been let down through our existing service provision. We do know that that is the case, and we reflect on that a little bit later on. So we have very dynamic views. We have some that are just generally quite happy, it happens, and then we have some people who are very unhappy with the existing collection services. The concerns around customer services, their concerns have been raised around customer service, lack of feedback, lack of communication around their waste collection, particularly when they have an issue. And then we've seen so many comments, we saw a whole bunch of other comments come in around the need for the township to inspire people to reduce their waste, reduce the amount of plastic, and have better options to help divert their waste so it doesn't need to go in the garbage can in the first place. We looked at our complaints. Around 1/3 of the total complaints that come in through Contact GB, that's through phone calls to us, emails to staff, and through the website. Around 1/3 of those complaints are focused on waste, and the vast majority of those are associated with missed waste collections. Having said that, although we get a very large number of our total complaint volume is around waste, we complete on average, about 285,000 complaints. We've got 285,000 collections each year. We had about 300 complaints come in through the system. Even if you were to assume that for every complaint we got, there were 10 missed collections that we never heard about, that would still be less than 1% of the total collections made that we were having concerns about. Even if we were getting 100 complaints, you're still at less than 10% of our total collections completed. So we do get some very strong complaints, but we should put those into perspective with the total amount of service that's provided. We also had a good chance to talk to our staff team. Our staff team deal with customers on a regular basis around waste. And so we had a good look at how we operate in terms of managing the contract, how we operate managing our relationship with the contractor, how we work on this from a customer service-based perspective. And it's challenging. We have very little control on what's happening on any given day. We are reliant on the information coming into us. And so as we go through that, a lot of it was to do with the data that we have as staff to enable us to answer questions if we're being expected to answer questions. We've seen some of the data that drivers have to operate off, and some of that is inaccurate. We believe there are better ways, better tools that are out there to help drivers be able to complete routes more efficiently and effectively. There's a lack of real-time access. We have no idea where the trucks are in the township, at what time they are, what roads they're on, what roads have been completed, what roads haven't been completed. We don't know whether they're running late, whether they're experiencing high volumes of garbage, whether they're experiencing challenges on our roads. We also have a lack of clear performance criteria embedded in our contract. it's very difficult to say when service hasn't been delivered if we haven't actually spent some time defining what service should be. So these were some of the things we wanted to address going through the RFP. The RFP was posted in January, it closed in late February, it was extended on the request of opponents. The RFP provided for a very flexible number of options to be provided back to us to allow the township, to allow council to build a future service contract which was responsive to yours and community's needs. It had clear performance expectations, and we had a substantial section on liquidated damages to try and measure performance against performance measures and to identify where there is substandard performance. In order of making sure we got to a broader market as possible, we proactively promoted this RFP. We reached out to our existing providers, we reached out to past providers of service to us, we reached out to every provider that is providing services currently in Bruce and Grey County, and we tried to identify every contractor that's doing services within 500 kilometres of the township. At the end of the period, we had 2 responses. The RFP had both mandatory and non-mandatory elements. You had to complete at least one of the mandatory clauses to be considered, and you could complete as many or as few of the non-mandatory elements as you wanted to. There was a technical submission and a financial submission. A minimum score was needed on the technical side before we would look at financial submission. The financial submission was not opened until the technical score had been viewed. They were viewed by a panel. The panel weighted the technical independently, came together for consensus scoring, and then after consensus had been reached, we then moved on to the financial proposal. Both Company A and Company B, we're providing, just calling them Company A and Company B at the minute. Company A and Company B provided very similar responses in their technical submission and were very closely matched. Both had outstanding elements to their proposals. So Company A clearly stood out for a very strong commitment to service delivery, strong supervisory support during service delivery. However, they were less clear on their environmental commitments and their progress to date or their planned progress into the future in things such as reducing the amount of waste that's collected, helping the township lower that level of waste, looking at alternative fuels and tracking their greenhouse gas emissions. Company B stood out for having a clear and in-depth climate and environmental progress report along with measuring progress. They're already significantly down the route of transitioning their fleet to being powered by the landfill gas created by landfills. And they had a greater range of support services and facility. Their technical support for service delivery was also a highlight of their proposal, but both scored very similarly through the technical proposal. We then had the pricing submission, and as I say, there were mandatory elements they had to support, and there were ones that they didn't need to provide a response to. So the first thing we asked for was a manual collection, basically a like-for-like with what we have today. The manual collection had a bagged weekly collection, which is our first scenario. Company A put a bid in of $1.3 million a year. Company B put in no bid at all for that, not prepared to do it. We asked then if we can have that collection done on one side of the road rather than both sides as it is currently. That did create a slight saving for Company A. They were able to do that for $1.18 million a year. Company B, not interested in providing a manual collection. We also asked for a provision of what it would be if we reduced the amount of waste that you were collecting with weekly household and went to a bi-weekly collection of bagged household waste. We had an organic collection alongside of that on a weekly basis. Company A could do that for $1.77 million a year. Company B, again, because this relied on a manual collection, were not interested. Under a manual collection, which is essentially a like-for-like, we believe that we would still generate garbage tag revenue from this, so there would still be an offsetting revenue line of about $335,000 for the first 2 lines. In the second line, we believe there is still revenue from garbage tags to be accessed, but because the organic collection is automated, it'd be very difficult to have a bag process on that, as that reflects about half of the waste. Conservatively, we're suggesting that there would be about 50% of the bag tag revenue in that scenario 2 option. I'll pause briefly if there's any questions on that. I will charge on. The next one was to look at automated collection options, and both companies, A and B, put in bids for this. So the first one was for a weekly blended collection. So this would see a truck going around the township every single week, picking up a single cart of garbage and organic material mixed together in one bag, in one unit, collected weekly. Company A can do that for $1.4 million, almost $1.46 million. Company B can do that for $618,000. The weekly organic, so that would be a bin placed out every single week with a organic materials in it, and a garbage bin of household garbage collected every other week, every second week. That does have an impact on the pricing. Company A, that would be $1.88 million a year. Company B, $811,000 a year. Company A did note that they could provide slightly reduced rates if we went to a bi-weekly collection of seasonal organics for 4 or 5 months of the year. That would save about $42,000 off that $1.88 million. And if we reduced to one side of the road, it would be another saving of about $174,000 off the $1.88 million.
Through you, Chair, why for scenario 3 only with the one side for road collection? Why not scenario 4?
So scenario 4, good question, through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, sorry, yes. So scenario 3, it's only because we asked them to cost out on that one. So the saving 173 is for the one side of the road on a weekly basis. We didn't ask them to cost out what it would be for a saving on one side of the road on a bi-weekly basis. I assume there would be a saving, but we didn't actually ask for that. That would be something we could go backwards and forwards with Company A if we decided to move forward in contract negotiations with them.
Thank you for figuring out my password.
We also looked at the feedback we'd received and looked to see whether there were some service enhancements that we might be able to offer and what they might cost. So we asked for 2 in this one. First one was what would once a year, somebody comes around and picks up 4 items of large material, so a mattress, a bed frame, a sofa, a chair, from the front of your house to save you from driving it down to Owen Sound and paying to put it in at the dump. Both companies were able to do this and provide this service. So 4 items per household once per year. Company A will do that for $314,000 a year. Company B for $45,000 a year. Neither company were able to deliver household hazardous waste either in a singular collected spot, so if for us to run a household hazardous waste day here, or to offer household hazardous waste on a door-to-door basis. So neither company could provide that.
No. Is there any explanation for the $280,000 difference between them two? That's that's a lot.
There's a significant difference in some of the pricing, for sure, Deputy Mayor Pringle. We had met with both companies after the RFP had been opened to ask questions about their pricing to make sure that they were all pricing on the same basis. I think it's fair to say that in this particular instance, Company B is planning to deliver this service in a different way to Company A, and that's certainly a large part of the price driver. So when we look at pricing over the scenarios that were put out, under all scenarios, even if we take $35,000 of lost revenue off, Company B scored more highly than Company A in all the financial assessments, and in some instances by more than $1 million a year. And so there is a significant difference in price between Company A and Company B. So our recommendation at this point in front of council is that we move forward with Company B. Company B scored slightly higher through the technical evaluation, but largely similar to Company A. Did have a slight point increase in that area, but Company B really knocked it out of the park when it came to pricing. Their pricing was very aggressive compared to Company A, and as I say, up to $1 million a year difference in pricing for their contract collection, even when we accrued for the lost revenue of bag tax. So our recommendation would be to move forward on the basis of initially with a conversation around a weekly automated organic collection, a bi-weekly household collection, and add in an annual curbside large item collection. That's where the recommendation is, obviously open to discussion and further input, and subject to ongoing contract negotiations with the successful proponent after the season. The alternative would be to go with there's lots of alternatives, but one alternative would be to go with a weekly blended collection without organics being separated and lose the large item. That would be the cheapest option that was put in front of us. The RFP had a 5-year contract term with the potential for 2 one-year rights. If council was interested, we may be able to attract more aggressive pricing through contract negotiations. If we were to simply go with a 7-year contract, some of the costs that we're having to see both companies absorb up front would therefore be stretched over a slightly longer term. And that's something we can certainly explore. The idea behind the automated collection is the provision of carts to households is embedded within these prices. So if we go forward with an automated collection, households will get a cart or carts delivered to them. And if we went with the recommendation, they would receive a cart for household waste, they would receive a larger cart for organic waste, and they would receive a smaller kitchen caddy to store in the kitchen under a cupboard or under the sink to put organics in during the week and then take them out to the bin, or every night, every couple of days, take them out to the bin outside. The benefit of moving to organics, to cart-based system is bag tags would be completely eliminated. We would be suggesting to eliminate the bag tag revenue stream. We did ask for options for how to recover costs through carts. There is technology out there, but both companies suggested they provided similar ideas for technologies. They both suggested that for a municipality like us, the administrative costs would likely far outweigh the cost of recovery from it. And basically what you can do is you could put little RFID chips, and so you could measure each household's waste. You could charge each household a bill based on the amount of waste it generates to recover costs. That would be a very complicated process for us to take on, and probably the companies suggest not worth it, but certainly there are some cost recovery ideas we could look at. One of the ways in which we could look at cost recovery that they've seen other municipalities do is make charges for, if you want, we provide a smaller cart. If you would like a larger cart, there is a cost for you to purchase that larger cart. Everyone gets a cart, but if you'd like a bigger cart, you might pay for that bigger cart. So the proposal we have in front of you this evening is we're going to be working on the basis of taking this in under the tax base. So if we now look at the potential funding for this, these are very big numbers to numbers that we have dealt with in the past. If we look at our net cost for household garbage alone, after we take into account our garbage tags, we're paying about $190,000 a year for a service we're now talking about paying $800,000 for. So this is a very significant increase in costs. It's about a 60% increase on our last contract for the lowest cost options, and it's a more than 100% increase on the higher end of our costs. So we're in the 60 to 110% increase or thereabouts in terms of pricing. So we wanted to provide you with just some ideas on how that might be offset. So in the recommendation, the way in which we could spread this out in a way which might be more palatable would be to use the reserves, which we've already started setting up in anticipation of these higher costs. Use reserves over the next 5 years to soften the impact of the costs. We're not having to hit it all in 1 year to the tax base. And if we added a 1.5% levy, special levy onto the tax base in each year of the next 5 years through to 2031, that 1.5% would catch our tax base up to paying for this service in 2031-32. So that's what we're suggesting would be. What would a 1.5% tax levy look like? This is where the good news might be. That's equivalent to about $32 a year on the average $300,000 assessed household based on our 2025 budget. If you're buying one bag tag and putting one bag of garbage out every 2 weeks, you're spending $58 at the minute on garbage tags. If you're a household that's got a high amount of garbage and you're putting 4 bags out every week, you're spending $468 a year on bag tags. So that 1.5% tax levy actually reflects a saving for many users of our household garbage process. Going forward from today, what we're looking for today is really which company we're going for and whether you generally like the idea of the garbage structure that we're looking at. From today, we will now go into detailed negotiations with one company or the other to now come up with a draft contract, detailed costs in the order of magnitude of what's been included within the RFP process. We would then bring that back to council. We're aiming for June for that conversation to happen so that we can then start the rollout. So we need to now go into the detailed negotiation to find out things like, well, if we go to one side of the road in this particular scenario, how much would that lower the cost? Would it have an impact on costs? And to try and deal with some of the other issues that flagged up through the RFP process, such as the challenges of some roads in the township that both proponents flagged. And our intent would be to bring those contract negotiations back to you in detail. I apologise for taking a few minutes in walking through that. I hope it was helpful in helping highlight some of the points, and obviously myself and the staff team are here to help with any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thanks, Al, for the presentation. No, there's a lot of information there to go through, and appreciate you taking the time to give us the highlights. So, all right, I'll open it up to council for questions. Who would like to start? Councilor Coburn.
I'm not sure that I have any questions. I think, for me, there's a couple of disappointing factors and much of it is beyond our control. The bag tags were helpful in that they were an incentive for folks to put out less waste. Now we're eliminating that, and I think that's unfortunate. But I also understand that we're moving towards more automation with these kinds of services, and likely that can't be helped. And I would be remiss if I didn't make a comment about Company A and Company B. I think everyone likely in this room, everyone certainly around the horseshoe knows which is Company A and which is Company B. So for me, we're lacking in a little bit of transparency here, and I think we'd be lying if we said we were, voting on a company blind, because I don't think we are. So I'm just going to put that out there. My preference would be for more transparency in reports like this. I think the public expects that and deserves that. It doesn't look like we have much of a choice. For me, this is coming down to dollars and cents. And with only 2 responses with the RFP, there just aren't a lot of options. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Councilor Coburn, for that. Yeah, you're right. We're limited on who can do what anymore. So this is a big project for sure. Any other questions, Councilor Day?
2 maybe very short questions. I understand with recycling, churches and businesses will no longer have their recycling picked up with a new system. Will those, I can't remember all the right phrases, but institutions and whatnot have the option of putting out garbage and organic waste?
Through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, yes. The recommendation in front of you will see the same properties that we service today receiving service in the future in respect to the household waste and or organic.
And then building a little bit on the loss of the bag tags and losing that opportunity to incentivize not using as much garbage or producing as much garbage, is there a limit at all to the number of carts that are picked up from every household? I do understand there's different sizes that people will be able to get. If there's someone who generates a lot of garbage, are they allowed to have more than 1 cart out?
So at this point in time, the work that's being done assumes that each household will have a single household waste cart, either for blended or in the instance of an organic, they'd have 2 carts. There are 3 sizes of carts, as we understand at this point, that are available to the township. The RFP has been priced on the provision of a cart, which is, I think we went with a 240-litre cart for a bi-weekly collection. That would give you capacity similar to the current capacities that we provide. We could, to both Councillor Coburn's point and to your question, we could provide a reduced size. So we pick the middle cart. There's a smaller cart, which we could pick. That could be perhaps our standard cart. And then you could purchase a larger cart. You could pay a cost incremental difference between the 2, which might incentivize you to produce slightly less waste if there was a cost associated with buying the cart. There is also a larger cart, which would allow for you to dispose of around about 50% more garbage than we currently allow you to dispose of. So there is a larger cart that could be collected, but there is no option at this point in time for people to have more than 1 cart per person.
I would support providing the smaller cart or the medium-sized cart, or I think for a good number of folks that I know, the tax levy increase is more than they spend on bag tags per year. So those folks will see an increase in the amount of money they spend. And that would help mitigate that discrepancy.
The smaller cart, just for awareness, the smaller cart would represent approximately, you'd still be able to get 2 garbage bags a week. So it would be about half of the amount that we maximum. So you'd still be able to do 2 full-size black bags each week of garbage in the smallest cart.
To me, that seems reasonable. I know different people have different lifestyles, but to me that seems quite reasonable, especially in this, we're providing, if we provide the option for organics, that cuts back on garbage volume for a lot of folks who aren't able to compost for some reason.
Good comments. Councilor Winters?
Let's start with the easy one. I know it's not our responsibility, but recycling, will it still be bi-weekly? service, or any idea what that's going to look like for frequency?
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor Pringle. Easy question. My answer, I'm going to give you two answers though to this. I'm going to give you the answer that we've been told, and I'm going to give you the answer which I suspect is going to become the reality. So the CMO contracts hold the provider from January 2026 to deliver the same service or better than we currently provide. So that would be a bi-weekly collection at the curbside. Having said that, I suspect, based on some of the information provided by both proponent A and B, that I would anticipate that the provider of the blue box services will be coming to us with a request to alter that approach, maintaining a bi-weekly collection from every household, but perhaps not on the same days we currently provide. But yes, blue box items will be collected on a bi-weekly basis.
Your report asks us as council to give you some direction, and I don't think any of us have done that yet. But I have to echo the comments that everybody else has said. There is no incentive in this proposal to reduce waste. So if you're going to give me a big bin and I don't have to separate my organics, then I probably not. I'm going to fill the bin. If we go to a bi-weekly collection versus the weekly that we currently have, then cutting the bin in half is going to cause us a lot of issues with families. We have small children and say, hey, you just took me from 4 bags a week to 4 bags every 2 weeks. Yes, it's an incentivized thing. But I'm also concerned that weekly organics is a truck driving around not picking anything up. That our investment, the time invested to do what we think it's going to do, I'm not sure Georgian Bluff, in my opinion, is there yet. We're not a real urban municipality. You know, we do promote the food recycler system. We do the cones. I quickly went online today to look what our neighbors are doing. Meaford and Owen Sound appear to be the only ones that are doing organic collection. Owen Sound is just going to start in June of this year as a bit of a pilot. Our neighbors to the west aren't doing it yet. Our neighbors to the north are not doing it yet. I don't know what makes us different to think that we need to apply this huge increase to a service that, yes, some of our residents are requiring, but I think there's other ways to accomplish that with a lot less money. But seeing a truck drive around when you actually look at what capacity will hold and what it's picking up on a weekly basis doesn't seem to be an environmentally smart thing for me. So I think what you're asking us is, do we support organics, yes or no? Are we looking for garbage collection weekly or bi-weekly? Are we looking at large, and I don't support myself, I don't support large collections either. I know it's been broached over different years, but to spend $45,000 to get rid of your mattress and your couch, you figured out how to get it there, you figure out how to get it away. There are people that do that. I don't think that's a taxpayer's responsibility to pay for the tax base. But so you're asking us a lot of questions, and I really think we all need as council to look at where we headed, not just nice report, way you go. It's not going to make your job any easier.
Yes, go ahead, no.
So Deputy Mayor Pringle, a couple of responses and then a point of clarity to what we're hoping to achieve this evening, because I think you hit the nail on the head. So the organics, we're midway through the pack of renewals. So there are a number of other Grey counties which are just about to go through their renewals. The whole of Bruce County is currently looking at going to organics. So all municipalities are currently in conversations as to what that could look like for Bruce County, but we are certainly ahead of the pack. Noting that we are trying to, we've got a certain degree of uncertainty because this is a 5-year contract. We don't know what the landscape's going to look like in 5 years. But yes, there's a certain degree of uncertainty. We would be fairly early in the rural municipality marketplace for organics for sure. To the other question in terms of direction, yeah, that's exactly what we're looking for. So we're not making any hard and fast decisions tonight as to organics in, organics out, bi-weekly, cart size, large item. None of that is actually needing to be decided on this evening. We need your direction to help inform our conversation so that we have a little bit of a leg up. If you really want to not consider the organics, then that would be useful direction to have right now to inform our conversations. But we can push all of those conversations off till we come back with the contract. We're just looking for the options. So any feedback we can get, but we're not making a decision on those things this evening. So if we went with, you said we'd like the small cart, 2 weeks, you've got a chart. We will be bringing that back for further ratification in the future. So we're just looking for broad direction at this point on what the waste service might look like. We don't need to pin down the specifics at this point. We do, however, need to pick a company that we're going to enter into those discussions with.
Thanks, Phil. Councillor Beck?
Just for clarity, I'll provide a little bit of background to my experience with green bins, and then if you could clarify what this service might be here in Georgian Bluffs, that would be helpful. The municipality I previously lived in went through a green bin transition about 20 years ago, and it was a very interesting transition to live through. And one thing that was quite different between, or I think when we hear organics here, we might be thinking of fruit and vegetable matter. In the other municipality, diapers and menstrual pads and chicken bones and larger animal bones, cat litter, all of that could go into the organic bin, and the plastics would get separated out before the anaerobic biodigester process. So that really reduced, for the households that were following it, that really reduced the amount of actual garbage going into the landfill. Would that be the same here, where it's not just vegetable matter, but it's also all those other products?
Yes, indeed. So the organics program that we've had priced out at this point is all kitchen scraps. So fish skin, meat bones of all sizes, meat product, fats, organic fats to some degree. Not pouring in 100 litres of organic fat, but organic fats out the scrapings of your roast dinner. All of that can go in. Pet waste, so cat litter, dog feces, that can all go in. If you use certain diapers, they would be able to go in. Certain sanitary products would be able to go in. That would all depend on the products that you're using. If you're using high plastic content, very processed diapers, they would not. But if you're using cloth diapers with the liner and the matter for the diaper would be able to go in. So all of those would be able to be recycled. It would also provide, for some degree, depending on how much of that you generate each week, for you to be able to use the cart for yard waste, leaf and yard waste. So we know that some of our residents actually can't compost on their own properties. They're not able to, they don't have the size of property, they don't have the ability to be able to compost. So things like leaves each year could go into the can if you were raking up your leaves. And I know that I'm not going to be promoting raking leaves with another hat on, but if you do rake your leaves can go in. Woody debris, so if you've got some debris from the ice storm, you'd be able to use your cart to its fullest extent for organic material, and there's fairly limited restrictions on what that organic material could be.
Thanks all for that.
I might as well just follow up and
Yep.
say, I do support the weekly organics collection. I've seen it work in other places, and for some people who don't feel comfortable composting, it provides an ongoing way to cope with all those organics in a way that's relatively low energy on their part.
Makes sense, comments? Yeah. Oh, yeah, Mayor Carlton.
So thank you for the answer on that one, because I was leaning more the way of Councillor Winters. Would there be use for that organics portion of it throughout the whole township? Because I, for one, probably wouldn't use that, but I don't have all those extra things that would go in there, and anything that's vegetable matter and such, I compost at home. So knowing that all the other things like the pet litter and that type of thing could go in, that gives a value, and probably more people would use it then. Can a person opt out of having that organics though, if there's somebody like me that probably would never use it?
So that's definitely something we would explore, is the ability to opt out, and whether or not there might be some cost savings that could be associated with that. We can certainly look into that.
I have a couple more questions too. Can there be different sizes of carts, or do they have to be the same throughout the township? So if somebody chose that they don't need that great big cart or a middle-sized cart, they want the smaller one, can there be that option to choose what they get?
My understanding is that the vehicles that both proponent A and proponent B are proposing the same cart manufacturer. So they're proposing exactly the same carts. And my understanding is that the equipment that both proponents will be using, there is 3 carts which are available that are able to be used with that. So we would be able to have a mix. So you might choose to have a small cart, your next door neighbour might decide to have the largest cart, and that would be perfectly fine.
And one more, one of the concerns or issues with the current provider and doing it manually has been completion of roads. That trucks are full before they get all the way through the roads. Is that going to be taken care of with this new system? Or do we need to still look at somehow changing those routes to allow the routes to be completed in a normal amount of time?
So through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, good question. Both proponent A and proponent B flagged that as a significant issue with our current system. And both proponent A and proponent B are unable to complete collections on 2 days of the week. They have proposed to extend their collection cycle over 4 or 5 days of the week. Both proponent A and proponent B suggest that is a much more efficient mechanism of service delivery. They'll be able to employ full-time staff dedicated to this area and this area alone through that. There will be dedicated equipment for this area and this area alone in that basis. And what that allows for is both companies have built in capacity so that if they got to the position that their Monday collection, for example, had found a very, very large amount of waste had been put out on that Monday, they would then have capacity to do an immediate collection the next day, something which we currently don't have because equipment that would be available the next day here is currently being used to service another municipality. So both companies have provided some flexibility to accommodate the amount of garbage they believe that would be generated, but both have also noted that their proposed methods of this service delivery, would allow for greater flexibility for making up missed collections. If, for example, there was a weather incident, if, for example, they had a particularly heavy waste they were finding the back end of the route was overly full.
I have a follow-up then, if I may. So if we went to bi-weekly on both waste and organics, could we split some of those routes into smaller chunks? And one large route now becomes 2, so this one gets this week, that one gets the next week. Would something like that help facilitate? Or just splitting the 2 waste and organics? Is that going to make a difference?
So through your Deputy Mayor Pringle to Mayor Carlton, these are questions I can give you partial answers to, but not full answers. The full answers will come. Is both proponent A and proponent B have provided demonstrations of the software they're using for routing, and so and they both flagged the same pressures over the current route scenario. They have both worked on the basis that we keep the same 4 broad areas that we currently have, but they've also both indicated they're likely going to have to tweak that somewhat because there has been changes in the township. So the intent would be to balance the routes appropriately to make sure that there was the least opportunity for that. Both have indicated that the collection of organics in a separate way would certainly relieve some of those pressures.
Yeah, next one's comments. Councilor Coburn.
Just going back to the organics discussion, I think I support it. And I'm looking over at Councillors Day and Winters. I support it as long as it's something that's going to be used. I do have concerns. I wonder if we need to do some public engagement to see if this would be a service that is significant enough proportion of our population would use. In terms of opting out of organics and saving a household some money, my concern there would be that people will do that and then throw their organic waste in with their garbage because they're going to save some money too. So I'm not so sure about that particular way of thinking, but again, I hear you when you say these are discussions that will happen in the future, and you're just looking for direction right now on which company to engage in negotiations with.
Yes, go ahead.
So through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, Councillor Coburn, you raise an interesting point, and putting the agenda together to try not to make this as big a report, a huge report, we put together the engagement summary first. The bottom end of the engagement summary, I provided an optional recommendation to do precisely what you're suggesting, which would be to do some engagement. We would want to do that in a fairly timely way, and because we now have the numbers out there, we want people to answer in a fairly statistically we would be suggesting going out with a statistically relevant survey in a quite tight window while we do the contract discussion to be able to bring that back in a fairly tight window and have some reliable data. We estimate we've run through 4 or 5 companies to get some numbers, and I think we'd comfortably be able to deliver that statistically valid survey for about 10,000, which we could draw. It's not in the budget, but we could draw it from the Waste Management Reserve to offset that cost at this point without going into any other budget lines. That would provide you with some community feedback in regards to the appetite for organics. Based on experience that the providers have shared with us in organics, we are not going to receive, on the first week you put organic carts out, you don't get half the garbage put into them. It does take time for organic collection to build up to its maximum efficiency. And there are things that we can do further down the line to incentivize the use of organics. So the new trucks that are coming, both Company A and Company B, are actually able to provide us an analysis of the waste going into the household cart and indeed the organic cart on a household by household property basis. So if we felt that we really wanted people to do organics, we could actually monitor the waste they're putting in to make sure they are separating at some point in the future. We're not suggesting going anywhere near that spooky stuff right now, but the technology is there.
So
No, go ahead.
I just want to follow up on that. So in terms of public engagement, I don't know the answer to this, and I'm not a statistician, but it will be interesting to know if they will target as our population sample the whole population, or will they take out the rural areas, which we know they're going to say, we don't need organics, we're just going to throw it there, and concentrate to take the sampling from the more urban centers like Shadow Lake.
So I can, through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, I can talk to the last survey we did. We'd have to obviously look for a company and get quotes from a company, but we have some flexibility in how we can set that up. The last company we did had both a geographic, an age and a gender separation. So they went across the whole township and got fairly good coverage across the whole township. And then it was statistically mapped to gender and age. We could ask them to map it to geography as well.
Mayor Carl.
So just last fall, when I visited my cousin in Charlottetown, they have a 3-bin system. And when those bins are loaded into the truck, there is a camera that is watching. And if you put the wrong thing in the wrong bin, you get a fine.
So for you, Deputy Mayor Pringle,
That's maybe a little far out for us yet, but
so that technology is actually going to come on the vehicles we get. Our choice is whether we get that technology turned on or turned off. It will be turned on in due time for the recycling. We've already been told that it will be turned on because they're trying to increase the total amount of recycling, and they will be monitoring for non-compliance and contamination of the recycling stream. We don't know when they're turning it on. We don't know what we're going to see and how that works out, but the technology will be embedded on the vehicles that we have.
Just regarding the rural nature of composting, it's very true that a lot of people who have large yards and lots of space will compost. Other folks can't or don't for various reasons. There was bear activity in one neighborhood not too long ago, which was closed down, which some people decided to stop composting during that time to deter critter activity in the yard. So just, I think, along with the fact that the organic bin takes so many things that you can't compost or can't compost safely in a rural area with critters, then there are benefits to it, even though we do have space to compost. I feel like through having lived in different places in Ontario, I've seen green bins come in and getting closer to home, and I feel like we're headed in this direction eventually, and it would be, I think it would be good to head in that direction sooner.
Comments from anybody else? I think I was going to comment on the organic piece there too. Weekly seems aggressive. Like we got to be efficient when we're going around too. We don't need to send company A or B out there to drive around with their truck and pick up a ton of stuff in the whole township in a day or 2 days around. So to be more efficient on that piece of it, how do we get to the point where we are more efficient? Where is that bi-weekly then we do that? And then we get into the odor piece of it then, right? So that's the other side of it, right? And I get that we don't need that either. So that's where I'm kind of tore a wee bit on. I do believe there's a place for the organic piece. I'm just not sure it needs to be weekly.
So through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, to you, Deputy Mayor Pringle. So the reason we went weekly on the organics is nobody does bi-weekly organics during the summer. And the reason for that is entirely to do with you're storing organic material outside, 30-degree heat. It's going to get, and it's got cat litter and dog feces and potentially diapers, last week's fish dinner. much more than a week, and even a week, it's probably going to get quite right. Now, you're not going to smell it because there's a firm lid on it, but after 2 weeks, that could be quite significant. So we could certainly, and it would be, if we did move forward with the organics, we would be further exploring the opportunities there could be for reduced collection during the winter, where perhaps there wasn't that problem.
Perfect. Just wanted to follow up there. And as far as the large piece collections on the properties, I'm, again, same as Council Winters there, you got it there, you can figure out how to get it back to the dump. I just, that's 45,000, we go with company B, that's 45,000 that we're not gonna spend, so, I don't think that's really something we need to put out there, but anyway, that's, my 2 cents on it. Councillor Day, did you?
Just to comment about the weekly organic pickup, another piece of that I think is that's an incentive for people to use the organics. They don't want the smelly stuff to stick around longer than 1 week either. So if you can get rid of it, by putting it in the right bin, then it will help people who don't already separate their garbage move down with that path a little bit faster. And to you, Councillor Coburn, through you, Chair, when I lived in the municipality that was was doing this when nobody in the surrounding area had done so yet, there was a ton of public engagement. It did take a lot of education and it wasn't a smooth process, and I'm grateful they've been through it first. I do remember how many tweaks there were to the bin to raccoon proof it. So they've had time to figure out glitches like that before it comes up our way. And that's a helpful thing.
Well, good comments. Carl?
Councillor Day may just have answered my one about, for a lot of people, I think these bins are going to sit outside or you're putting them in a garage somewhere. If they're sitting outside, are they bear-proof that thing? Because I know my black compost bin a couple of times in the last year has seen a bear at it.
Yeah. So through you, Deputy Mayor Bringle, to Mayor Carlton, one of the first next steps is we will be asking for examples of the carts to be provided for us. So we're able to see that. We did ask that they were wildlife proofed to some degree. So I will be interested to see the mechanisms they deploy.
And I have another
Yep,
comment.
yep.
So the large item pickup, that one, there seem to be a lot of residents in the municipality that have a requirement for that. My thought on that was to do some sort of pickup on a scheduled basis, maybe spring and fall, but that they would have to register for that and pay a nominal fee. And by that registration process, now whoever is contracted to pick it up is going specifically only to those spots, but they would be paying for it in some way. So it wouldn't be a cost on the rest of the tax base, but it would be a service we could find a way to facilitate, would be my thought.
I think there's probably ways we could do that outside of this conversation.
Council Winters?
Again, I want to reiterate, a lot of work gone in here. It's not an easy task. There's a lot of moving parts to this. Sitting here listening to the bin, though, something just jumped into my head. We have a seasonal population, a weekend population here. And if you roll your bin out on a Sunday night before you go back to your main city, what happens to the bin? Because we have a bylaw saying by 8 o'clock the night that your garbage is picked up, the bin has to be rolled back in. Currently, we have bear-proof bins. We have bags that people leave. It seems to be dealt with that way. But I think that's another issue that is going to rear its head, is our seasonal population is going to say, hey, wait a minute, what happened to my service level? What am I doing with this bin? They're going to be polluted in the areas. Yeah, it's just something to be cognizant of, and I think it will be. I'm sure other municipalities have figured it out, but it's something that I can see Island View Drive is quite concerned.
Yeah, so for you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, this, I'll be honest, is, Island View Drive is the prime example, but it's not the only example by any stretch of imagination. How we deal with carts, with residents that put it up on a Sunday evening and they're not back till the following Saturday is going to be something we're going to have to look at. We've reached out to other municipalities that have got cottage areas and have gone to cart-based collection systems. They have reported largely not having problems that we might anticipate. But for sure, we're going to have to look at some adjustments to our bylaw, because our current bylaw wouldn't allow for that to happen. So there is going to be some knock-on impacts of moving to an automated collection for sure. The work between now, unless you wanted to go with the manual collection still, the work between now and June next year is fairly significant to try and get all the pieces in place, because there's a lot of moving parts.
I'd like to say, as a council member, I'd like to see something that's works for everybody, something that's economically feasible and has some ramifications to poor service deliveries moving forward. That's going to be key. I think our residents will support paying a little bit more for a service that they can guarantee and that there are penalties. If we have the same service level that we've had in the last year, it's not going to work.
So to you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, as I noted in the presentation, I didn't spend a great deal of time on it. We had a large section within the RFP, which did go backwards and forwards with the vendors a little bit as to what we meant by some of that. We have liquidated damages within there. We have clear performance expectations around, the window that service is allowed to be performed in, penalties for services not being rendered in that time period. And certainly, because we've done a little bit more on that end at the front end, we did have legal review that before it went into the RFP to make sure we're on the right side. Again, that would have to go through that detailed contract negotiation, but in responding to the RFP, both the two proponents that responded have acknowledged the liquidated damages clause and the performance standards that we're asking that they maintain to, which is something which has been absent in the past. There's certainly we're hoping they do a really good job. Whoever proponent A or company A or B is, we're hoping that they do a good job. And we don't need to pull that trigger, but we certainly have far clearer tools in the future than we have had in the past to both monitor performance and apply financial penalties if performance is less than ideal.
Member Carlton.
So another item that's not currently picked up is styrofoam. Hanover has some kind of styrofoam crusher they got through, I think, a grant with Bruce Bauer. Is that something that we would consider looking at, is getting something like that? Because styrofoam can take up so much space in garbage and there's not a lot of weight to it. But to have that go into the waste stream seems, and I actually reached out to the deputy mayor at Hanover and he sent me the contact information for who looks after that for them.
So through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, more or less aside from this, there are a whole bunch of waste products that are out there that can be done. Styrofoam is actually one of those ones which is really frustrating because it's very easily recycled and reused. Meaford is another township. Actually, Meaford has a styrofoam recycling session. They offer it similarly to hazardous waste. It's an external company that comes in with a processing machine on site. It both grinds it up and then compresses it into blocks, which are then able to be shipped off site. The bulk of styrofoam is what makes it a very expensive product to look into. But for sure, as we continue to look at ways in which we can reduce waste, just as we have with things like the food cycler, just as we have with negotiating the leaf and yard waste site at Owen Sound, we can look at opportunities that might exist for that. One of the ones we've recently bought on, and I'm going to give a quick shout out because we've only really got it going in the last few weeks. We actually offer battery recycling now at township offices. So if you need to dispose of batteries, household AA's and AAA's and all that sort of fun stuff, you'll be able to recycle those at our community centres, and we've got a new agreement going with a vendor for doing that. So we are constantly looking for ways to offer alternative services. It would be outside of the scope of this contract, but we can take the styrofoam one away.
So, all right. Any further questions? Not seeing any. Do you need me to read the recommendation again, or is there amendments to be made to the recommendation? Would you like me to read it again? No, you're good? Everybody's good? All right, if we're ready, I'll vote. No.
So do you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, just very quickly, we had a couple of comments which are not embedded within the recommendation that currently stands. So if you wanted to add them, now would be the time. So the first one would be if you did want us to do with some public engagement. There are two recommendations I've drafted if somebody wanted to put them on the floor. They're at the very back end under other options at the last report. If you wanted to review those, change them, put something different in, that would be valued at this point. Currently, the direction actually excludes going to a single stream. And so if you wanted us to continue a conversation on a single stream, now would be a good place to add that in. And I might suggest that into detailed contract negotiations with Company B to develop a draft contract to services that will include consideration for curbside automated food waste using carts for bi-weekly basis, weekly organics, and an option for single stream household waste. If you were wanting to add that in, now would be a good time to provide that direction.
Councilor Coburn.
And I wonder if we're also wanting to take out the annual large item collection service. That's part of the recommendation as well.
You might, to you, Madam Clerk, you could all, you would be, it might be easy to break these out recommendation by recommendation, voting each one separately. I don't know, because then individual recommendations could fail without having to amend the main recommendation. I don't know.
Thank you. Through you. So as part of an amendment, paragraphs can be struck. So I think I did draft something here as I was listening to the discussion, but if it doesn't capture everything, please let me know. A amended recommendation could read that council directs staff to award RFP 2025-01 being a request for proposal for waste collection services to Company B as per report CAO 2025-019, and that council directs staff to enter into negotiations with Company B with contract details subject to the results of a statistically relevant survey and council input and direction based on those results, and that it include an option for single stream waste, and that council authorizes staff to spend up to $10,000 from the Waste Management Reserve to support undertaking the survey through a third-party vendor, and that staff be directed to bring the contract back for council review prior to signing, and that staff extend the option to participate in the contract with the township absorbing all waste disposal fees with the Block 75 condos at Cobble Beach, and that the contract for services be started no later than June 1st, 2026.
Okay, I didn't hear the large, took it down.
New struck.
Oh, okay. Yep, go ahead.
$10,000 seems high to do a fairly targeted study. Is there any more economical way of doing that?
Quotes that I've seen for a statistically valid survey, which usually have to be done by phone. You could also maybe do something with like a mail-based distribution system. You're usually looking in the $5,000 to $10,000 range. That would be pretty standard for a statistically valid survey of this scale in an area like this.
That was the max too, right? 10,000 was gonna be the max. Councilor Thompson?
I'm curious about, so we're entering into negotiations, but have we given enough information to do that? Like, I'm hearing sort of some mixed feelings about organics. So I think we're doing a survey, we're entering detailed negotiations, but we're not sure about some aspects of that negotiation yet. Is that? I sometimes think we come back from these with a contract to sign, and then we think, well, I don't know that we authorized a contract or we authorized the details. I just don't know if we provided enough information.
Thanks, there, Councilor. Mal?
So through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, I would agree, and I don't think that's problematic too much at this point. I think based on the discussion we've had and roughly the conversation we've just had, we could end up with 2 or 3 contracts which we drafted, which we come back and share you, or we could come back with needing further direction to finalise the contract. I don't think we're going to be coming back with one contract based on this conversation, and I find that as a quite acceptable point to be at this point.
Thanks, Al.
Okay, that's sorry, Mr. Chair.
No, it's all good. Thanks, Councilor Thompson. Any further questions to the amendment, Mayor Carroll?
Maybe it's not a question to the amendment. I'm just thinking the large items or the styrofoam or extra things like that, are we giving actual direction there, or we're leaving that totally out of this part of it and dealing with it separate?
So through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, the way in which I understand the revised recommendations that the clerk has read out, we would not be considering those through these contract discussions completely. That would be a completely separate conversation under a completely separate umbrella at some point. But I think we hear those feedbacks, and we'll certainly look to see if we can. We have a waste management community of practice with the other member municipalities. We can look to see what other opportunities there are through that we might be able to leverage. So we'll take that away, but we don't need to just deal with it here.
Yeah, perfect. Further comments? We need a mover and a seconder to the amendment that's been put out. Councillor Winters, Councillor Colburn, discussion. I'm going to call the vote on the amended motion on the floor. All those in favor? That is carried. And back to the main motion with the amended, main motion as amended. We have a first and second. I just need to call the vote. All those in favor? That is carried. Did I see your hand, Ryan? On the main.
I can see there's a delay. I put it, it
Okay.
seems to be like about an 8-second delay.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Thompson. All right, thank you. You need a break? All right. We're on to 7.1.3 CAO 2025-020 updates to the bylaw 14-2010 to regulate open air burns. Recommendation reads that the Township of Georgia Bluffs endorses an updating of the bylaw number 14-2010 regulate open air burns as attached, and that staff be directed to implement permitted software burnpermits.com to support permit administration, and that the administrative fee be implemented to recover costs of permit administration, and that staff be directed to amend the fees and charges, bylaws, and brings to council for approval to reflect the administrative fee. Need a mover and a seconder to put on the floor. Mayor Carlton. Write it. Councillor Thompson. Jeff, floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. For you, Madam Chair. The township current open air bylaw, that does work. But that being said, this bylaw is outdated. It was last updated in 2010 and is in need of sort of an update and a refresh. And with this bylaw, the way we have it laid out, it's in line with the Meaford bylaw, which our department serves both municipalities. So it's created consistency with the burn bylaws and our ability to deal with them. The staff is also recommending the switching from a paper form to the online burnpermits.com, which is a cloud-based permit system. And it will improve efficiencies like communication with the fire department. And it's going to free up staff from, filling up, doing all the permits or doing that stuff on paper and online and having to get that to us or us having to create files for that. And it makes it easier for the residents to apply and stay informed. That with that program, that cloud permit always allows emergency alerts. So we can, once you have your permits and you attach your phone number or emails with it, we can actually send alerts. So if we have burn bans in the future, or just to say, it's too windy, don't burn today, we can send those out and it'll blanket everybody's phones and emails. So that day they'll have an understanding. So we're hoping to move that way at this time.
Perfect. Thanks, Jeff. Great report. Nice to see some alignment for sure. Questions and comments from council?
If I have to say that, in my place of employment, we use this through the municipality of Meaford, and it works well. You apply for a burn permit once a year. You apply for what you're looking at doing. There's certain categories and you do it, and then it goes to the administrator to be approved. You do not necessarily get a burn permit instantaneously. It can take between 3 hours this morning and it can take up to a week depending on what you're doing. The day you go to burn, you make a phone call and it'll tell you what the conditions are and it notifies everybody what you're doing. The difference between Meaford and what we're proposing in Georgia Bluffs is Meaford does not have a charge for it. They do not charge an administration fee for issuing that permit. I purposely went in line today to do that, to prove that they do not do it. So if we're going to be consistent with Meaford, we're going to be consistent with the Inner Township, I do not support administration fees with burn permits.
Thanks for that comment. Jeff, you have a response for that?
I'm fine. So for you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, I have no problem whatsoever. Just trying to, there we are. So again, we could simply strike the third line of there. The fee would be $5, and that would just simply mean we're not out of pocket, but we're not going to be out of pocket a great deal on this one anyway. And so I don't think there would be any significance to removing the fee.
Thank you. Councillor Coburn.
I'm just looking on, I don't see page numbers, so it's 4.6. And that is under part 3. 4.6 says notwithstanding section 4.6. Is there, what section is that referring to? Because that is 4.6. So I don't know if that's a typo or if I'm missing a different section, or do you see
Yes.
where that is?
So you Deputy Mayor Pringle, I believe 4.6 should be 4.5 in that, if I'm correct.
Yes, that was just going to say. It's
And
all right.
then, okay, so am I understanding, just same point, am I understanding that a permit is not required if a property is of a certain size then? Is that?
No.
No,
Everybody will need permits.
The difference is in the time of day. If you live on more than an acre, there isn't a limit on the time of day.
okay, because this one specifically refers to an outdoor fireplace permitted at all times on properties greater than 1 acre. So that's just permitting that particular use. It has nothing to do with needing a permit or not needing a permit. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? I think we need to make an amendment then to the, okay,
3 to strike paragraphs 3 and 4.
3 and 4. So to do the amendment then, striking paragraph 3 and 4, I just need a mover and a seconder from the main recommendation. Is that all we need? Okay. So I'll need a mover and a seconder to remove paragraph 3 and 4 from the main recommendation that's there now. Councilor Winters? Councilor Colburn? Any discussion? All in favor? That is carried. All right, and back to the main motion as amended. Any discussion? Not seen any. All those in favor? That is carried. All right, thank you. Thanks, Joe. On to development and infrastructure 7.2, 7.2.1 DEV 2025-034 hybrid planning model for Grey County. Recommendation reads the council indicates support in principle for a hybrid service delivery model for Grey County with Georgian Bluffs as a participant, and the staff be directed to share such support with Grey County staff prior to May 9th, 2025. I need a mover and seconder on the floor. Councilor Winters, Carlton, and Michael, you got this one?
Yes, thank you. You Deputy Mayor. So as council is aware, within Grey County, there are 9 lower tier municipalities. We also have the several conservation authorities who provide a regulatory role as well as a natural hazards support to our municipalities. And we also have the Niagara Discovery Plan snaking through our county as well. So what that kind of provides is there's a variety of ways in which planning approvals are managed, and applications are frequently dealt with by multiple planners at the local municipality level, the county level, or within one of the permitting agencies. And this can create some challenges, as council has seen in the past. There can be a bit of a lack of clarity as to who is the principal authority or who's leading the application through the process. There's often a bit of confusion with the applicants in what they require, because the municipality may be suggesting one study or what have you, and the county comes across and suggests something else. And there's often a duplication of roles where you have equally qualified planners in multiple organizations viewing one application. And all of that tends to lead in create delays and added expenses for the applications. So to help counter this, Grey County has for a while now been looking at more of a collective shared planning model. And they looked at this through 2023 and 2024, where we looked at other jurisdictions across the province to see if there are any benefits to a more of a centralized planning model where
the local municipalities would rely solely on the county's planning expertise to administer planning applications coming through the local level. And that initial concept of a centralized planning system was released to local municipalities and for some discussion. At that time, it was not supported by all municipalities. In fact, one municipality provided formal comments saying that they would not be in favor of a centralized model. And essentially that then brought the county to do some more research, and they most recently came forward with a more of a hybrid model, and they provide some information on that at a joint council meeting for all councils, and I'm sure the council is aware of. Essentially, the hybrid model changes the staffing of planning, but it makes no changes to the approvals. So, in a sense, you would have, instead of a locally employed planner, you would have a county employed planner providing local planning advice in the municipality's office, either on a 5-day per week basis or on some other modified schedule. And all of the approvals, whether the approvals go through the Committee of Adjustment or to the Committee of the Whole Council, would still rest with the local municipality. You would also have some more support for residents at the local level, whereas right now you have just thinking of the Georgian Bluffs model, we have one person who does the planning approvals and also has other duties as well. If that one person, namely me, is not available, then the planning function kind of stalls for a while. Under the county's model, one of the advantages of that is that you would have several planners to provide support to that local municipality. So it does provide some benefits to Georgian Bluffs, where it provides a planning team of expertise. It provides a very varied review levels. If the minor applications probably be reviewed by more of a junior planner, where the more complex applications would be reviewed by a senior planner, and has the ability to provide different skill sets for municipal applications. It would also provide more efficient review of applications. So regardless of the principal authority, whether it's the county or the township, one planner would handle the applications instead of, in our instance, we have two planners handling each and every application that runs through. So you wouldn't have multiple sets of comments going to the applicants. It would just be one set of comments coming from the county planner in this case. And then it also provides for some redundancy, as I mentioned, when the planner is on vacation, there's a pool of planners that would fill in for that planner as well. When the development pace increases, which it may in coming years, there would be additional planning staff that could be applied to that increased development pressures in each municipality. If one municipality is having more pressure than another, county planning staff could shift between municipalities as needed. And I think from a broader perspective, when you have a larger planning team that is providing that function, there's a better ability to attract other planners coming in to replace vacancies in that larger team. It would be more attractive than, potentially more attractive than working for a smaller municipality. Of course, the proposed model would retain the local zoning bylaws and relevancy control of the local official plans. The county planner would also be maintained as well. And the last advantage is the planner would still be available in the Georgian Bluffs office, just as there is one now. And
be yet to be determined based on the amount of planning activity, whether that person or that individual would be in the office on a full-time basis, 5 days per week, or perhaps it's certain days of the week that person would be in. Of course, there's a cost associated with all of this sort of thing, and historically, for Georgian Bluffs at least, the planning costs or the planning function costs have been recovered through about 30% of those functional fees have been recovered through our land use plan fees. The remainder of those, 70%, has been recovered through the general tax levy. I don't anticipate that the costs would decrease through the county model. There may be a slightly different way of collecting those. The county would have to amend their fee schedule based on how that model works and the number of municipalities that are opting in or out of that model. There's going to be a critical mass at one point to determine whether or not that moves forward. So kind of generally speaking, the county is now looking for municipal support in principle for a hybrid model. They recognize that the centralized planning model is not going to work for the county, given the feedback from the local municipalities earlier. So now they're hoping to provide some sort of a hybrid model. And I think the largest challenge that we're going to face is whether there's enough critical mass from the local municipalities opting into this program to be able to efficiently run a hybrid model. The last things that I wanted to mention was that while this is happening, there's still planning functions happening. There's still applications coming in. There's still reviews occurring and what have you. And to help with Georgian Bluffs planning function, staff are anticipating retaining or starting to recruit again for a planner in this year to help reduce and offset the reliance on our consultants, as well as provide some redundancy in the planning program that the township does offer. In doing so, if we are successful in recruiting a planner, that planner would come in with full knowledge that there is the county's hybrid planning model that's being reviewed. And there may also be some potential to explore, even aside from the county's hybrid system, perhaps some shared services with some of our neighboring municipalities who don't currently have planning services in-house. So with that, staff are recommending that the township support the hybrid model at the county level, and that we provide a letter of support in principle. And from that, then the county will be able to determine if there is enough of a interest to actually move forward with the hybrid model or not, and we'll see what happens with that in future months.
Thanks, Michael, for that. All right, well, over to council then for questions to Michael and staff. I have not seen any questions, so, right, Councilor Thompson.
Well, I'm wondering if do we have the information that we need to make the decision? So I don't know, I understood the report, but I had a hard time understanding what's our volume. So, I mean, it does say, we're doing this, we're doing that, but I don't know how much we're doing it. So are we having, what's the number of applications we're seeing? What's our current complement? Like, I really had a hard time saying when I was looking at this, thinking, well, what what supports the decision to agree with it or not? I don't know. I don't know what I'm considering, I guess.
Great question.
Curious if,
Michael?
yeah.
Through Deputy Mayor to Councillor Thompson, right now, we're fairly consistent in our number of applications from year to year. Right now, we don't have a lot of applications, to be honest. Last year was around 36 applications that were processed. The year before, I believe it was a little bit lower. The year before that was a little bit higher. So when you look at the long-term trends, we're generally speaking, we process about 40 applications a year. Obviously it goes up and down. And the vast majority of those applications have been services. Occasionally, we've had plans of subdivision or official plan amendments or more complex zoning amendments coming through, but the vast majority of applications that we process at the local level are minor in nature. Generally speaking, it's current staff complement is able to handle those applications as one plan to be able to. It's the downside of that is when you're processing applications, you don't have the opportunity then to process larger policy planning matters, such as our new official plan or a new zoning bylaw, and that's when a planning team is able to do that for us. So, and in answer to Councillor Thompson, we're averaging about 30 to 40 applications a year, and with that volume, it is handled by one planner if that's the only sole purpose of that staff position.
Yeah, thanks for that. Councillor Thompson, is Niall's going to comment also here before I go back to you?
Yeah, just to add to that, so when we've looked at the planning figures, as Mr. Bennett says, it's about one planner. I would add to Mr. Bennett's comment is that we are reliant on consultants at this point in time. So some of those standard planning applications are dealt with by consultants because we simply don't have the capacity in-house. So we have a vacancy, a long-running vacancy. It's been vacant since I started here in a planning team. Before I started here, that has been recruited for a number of times. We haven't been able to fill it to date. So we have about the need for one planner on a full-time basis. One of the challenges we experience is, as Mr. Bennett says, a large number, the majority, are fairly simple, do what we did last time, repeat it this time, to a severance. But every now and again we get a subdivision which is very complex and has many moving parts. If we had a single junior planner, the junior planner might be able to do 90% of the work, but we'd still need that, for that 10% of the time, 15% of the time where we had the more complex stuff come through. Well, that's where there is some real efficiency that could be gained from this, and likely a cost saving over our current reliance on consultants. All that's being asked for at this point in time is to further the conversation to the next step so we can actually bring you that analysis, because we don't even know if there is an option. If there aren't enough councils that are interested in pursuing this, there is no alternative to the way in which we're doing it today. We just have to try and keep doing it the way we're doing it. So all we're wanting to do is run into that conversation through which we will be gaining a lot of that analytical data that Councillor Thompson mentions in making the decision. So this is just simply an in-principle conversation. So the county has some reliance that if everything comes out the right, if it looks like it's going to be more efficient, if it looks like it's going to be better customer service delivery, that they know that they're going to have 2, 3, 4, whatever that number might be, that would then be interested in moving forward to the next step. They're just looking to see if it's worth even exploring. If it's not worth exploring, we'll just stop and then we'll look at it internally ourselves.
All right, Councillor Thompson, did you have a follow-up?
Well, I'm kind of reeling now because maybe I'm not understanding, but I think I believe you guys have looked at the numbers and that's good. And if my colleagues don't agree, maybe this is just me that's thinking this, but I think I wonder if you're asking me to make a decision based on the numbers that you looked at, and that's what I'm curious about. So, I mean, I guess my experience would be, you're right, we do receive, I think you said our numbers have been stable. Well, that could be, I'm not sure what I'm comparing them to. And I do see, you know, typically we have consultants who do the work. So how many applications did we have? How many did the consultants look at? What was the cost of the consultants? What would, so I feel like I'm being kind of stickler at this, but I'm not sure that I have any data to look at. I think what you're saying is you've looked at the numbers and we should do this, but and I'm trying to read now as you're talking, you're saying the county's not all they're asking for is our permission to do an analysis?
Basically, through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, yes, that's basically it. So the analysis was run under the centralised planning model in terms of data and everything else like that. And I was just going to look, because I think we gave some data in our last report on this around the costs we're currently doing, the number of applications and the amount of consultant time. We can certainly provide all that to you for sure. This is the county.
So what
the county?
When I'm reading, go ahead.
So the county had proposed a centralised model. There wasn't support for the centralised model, so and there was quite a lot of work went into that. So what they're trying to work out is there interest in a hybrid model enough for us to do the work that we did last time? We don't want to repeat the work we did last time if it's not going anywhere, basically. So they're just looking to, basically, as you say, for us to say, we'd be interested if it makes sense. Go away, tell us if it makes sense.
So what I'm reading is that they're asking us to provide in-support principle for a hybrid planning service delivery model. You're saying they're just asking for permission. They're not asking for that. They're just asking for permission to analyze it.
Yeah, so good. Thanks. Hold on there, Ryan. Councillor Thompson. There.
Oh,
Mayor
sorry.
Carlton.
So I think what they're asking us for right now, Ryan, is permission to go ahead and to look at it. Would a hybrid model work? Are we interested in exploring that? And if sufficient lower tiers are interested in it, then the county will move ahead with that, but they'll then be reporting back to each of us before it goes to, yes, this is what we're going to do. It's really just to find out, are enough lower tiers interested in moving to the next step?
Councillor Thompson.
Nope.
Okay. No, I kind of
I
take
may be
it.
misread it.
Sorry?
I'm okay if I've maybe misread it or if they've misarticulated it. That's okay with me.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. For myself, I just kind of take it as we've already been explained to us or told us that there's probably no cost savings to us at all in this whole scenario. But if we can be in better efficiencies to getting stuff done quicker, that's where we're going to save some time and move some stuff along. And I do believe too, it's just really to find out who's going to be the next players, if there is any, if it works out for us. Again, from what I understand through the county piece, we're not going to save any money, but if we can be more efficient and get stuff done, that's where we can make up some time and move stuff along.
Yeah.
So again, I think the ask is to be able to get to that point where we can see that happen, if it can happen. Who's involved. So any further questions? Yeah, Councillor Colbert.
Not a question, but more of a comment. I would hope that we would see some cost savings compared to using a consultant. So if that's what we're currently doing, and we know we've had trouble attracting staff in the past for this role, so I would like to see us provide support in principle, but I don't want to be held to, well, you supported it and we went to all this work and you still turned it down. Like, we can't make a decision until we see what comes back from us.
100%.
Yep.
All right, any further comments? All right, so we have a motion on the floor there. I'm going to call for a vote on that motion on the floor. All those in favor? That is carried. All right. 7.2.2 DEV 2025-035 speed limit review, concession 24 is Zion Church Road. Recommendation reads that council received staff report DEV 2025-035 entitled speed limit review, concession 24 and Zion Church Road, and that the speed limit on concession 24 from Zion Church Road to approximately 1,345 meters east of Side Road 20, Gleason Lake Road, to be reduced to 60 kilometers per hour from the existing 80 kilometers per hour, and that the speed limit on Zion Church Road from Gray Road 1 to Concession Road 21 be reduced to 60 kilometers per hour from the existing 80 kilometers per hour. And that a bylaw be amended, the speed limits be presented at April 16, 2025 council meeting. I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Day, Councillor Colburn, Kevin, comment? Any comments on this?
And through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, and to members of council, good evening, and thank you for having me. I'll be pretty brief on this one as well. So in late summer of 2024, staff received several complaints and inquiries about the existing speed conditions on Zion Church Road, mainly outside the settlement area of Oxenden. What prompted it was a resident, mainly around the surrounding businesses in the cemetery, with a speed complaint. So staff took it upon themselves to do an in-house review, given the existing documentation, such as various Ontario traffic manuals and Transportation Association of Canada manuals when it was made available, to do an in-house review of the existing speed considerations. Staff reviewed several of the road geometries, existing road geometry, including the horizontal and vertical sight lines, existing driveways, pedestrian movements. So in this section, mainly being, and if you refer to attachment 2, Madam Clerk, if you could bring that up on the large screen, it's probably easier to explain in this case. So the section from Gray Road 1 to Concession 20 has several impacted vertical and horizontal sightlines, pedestrian movements, again with the cemetery and the Gleason Brook pottery, seeing a lot of traffic movements there. So there was considerations with the existing traffic reports that we had conducted in the early spring of 2024, found that the average daily traffic area was around 600 or so. So which prompted staff to do a review of the existing speed. As this is known as a local rural road, the starting point as per Transportation Association of Canada is a starting value of 60. And from a risk calculated score, the higher the risk, the lower the speed limit. So staff in-house again completed this review, that it was recommended to be moved from the existing 80 kilometers an hour to the 60 kilometers. Attachment 1 may be the best one. The map. So as this section of Zion Church Road is currently unsigned, it automatically defaults to an 80 kilometer an hour within the Highway Traffic Act. So in completing our review as well, we looked at the area of Lake Charles. As you will see in the green section of Lake Charles, it is currently a built-up area, which is currently signed as 60. So staff prompted the additional review with a permit for a driveway installation. Staff had initial concerns with the review of that permit, mainly being sightlines constricted by the narrow width of the roadway, existing driveways within and around that area, and the vertical and horizontal sightlines. So staff recommended extending that from the existing 60 kilometers an hour to about Side Road, Side Road 5, I believe it is. When you're reviewing the existing speed limits and making a recommendation, what you want to consider is a consistency in speeds. So therefore, staff recommended extending the full width of Concession 20 to Zion Church Road as a 60 as well. And again, that section is currently unsigned, therefore it defaults to an 8. That additional section on Concession 20 has a auto business as well, and a few other businesses. There is several residential driveways in and around that area. There are children playing signs within that area as well, so staff took that into consideration. And then the south section of Zion Church Road, again, is a narrow section. It is currently gravelled. It is highly used with the average daily traffic of around 600 yen. It's unsigned right now, so staff are recommending to reduce the speed limit to 60. So with that recommendation, Zion Church Road from Grade Road 1 to Section 1. Sorry. To Section 24. You have to forgive me, I said Section 20, I meant Section 24. Is recommended be reduced to 60. Concession 24 from the existing 60 in Lake Charles to Zion Church Road is recommended to be reduced to 60. And then the section of Zion Church Road from concession 24 to concession 21 is recommended to be reduced to 60. And that will in turn provide a uniform speed limit reduction, as you see with the areas in green. Concession 21 is currently 60. The section on Gray Road 1 entering the community of Oxenden is currently assigned 60. The section within the community of Oxenden is at 50 kilometers an hour, as that is a built-up area and a satellite area. So staff are recommending to reduce the existing 80 kilometers an hour within those road sections to 60 kilometers an hour.
Thanks, Kevin, for that report. All right, I'll open up to council for questions. Councilor Day.
I feel like I need to preface this by saying I did check with the integrity commissioner, and I do not live where the speed limit might change, but I do live very close to there. But by reason of the member having a pecuniary interest, which is of a common interest with electors generally, the integrity commissioner deemed that I do not have a pecuniary exclusionary interest that should make me step back from this conversation today. So I did talk to some neighbors about this one. There were a few complaints or concerns, I should say, about reducing the speed limit from the entirety of the distance from Oxenden to Lake Charles, but those were outnumbered by the number of people who were very supportive of the changes. And we're really pleased to hear that there would be hopefully an increased sense of safety, walking and cycling and dog walking, waiting for school buses in that area. There were questions about timing, when this would happen, if it were to happen. And a tongue-in-cheek sort of comment about how there's already speed control with the potholes, which might have been a roundabout way of asking when the increasingly large potholes might get fixed on that road. But we're very cognizant of the fact that there are many roads in Georgian Bluffs that require spring repairs. So no, everyone is good-natured about it when I was talking to them. And I also just wanted to thank you for the in-house review, which I know is something we have asked for before as a council.
Thank you for that. Any comments to that at all? Or?
I can, through you, Deputy Pringle, to Councilor Day. Just on the timing, if Council chooses to move forward with the recommendation, staff will bring a bylaw for Council's consideration on April 16th. I don't want to speak for our operations staff, and perhaps I can look to Niall for his comments for the operations staff. I would anticipate that operations staff can implement the signs shortly thereafter. Within the financial piece, if you do note, just because there is recommendations within the Ontario Traffic Manual for spacing, that's approximately 18 new regulatory signs will have to be installed up to Section 24 and 10 regulatory signs on Zion Church Road. So I can't really speak in terms of the how long it would take the sign shop to manufacture those signs and for staff to place them in to implement those signs. Again, I would anticipate it would be fairly short turnaround, but for timelines, I can't really comment on that one.
No reason why we should sue you, Deputy Mayor Pringle. I don't think there's any reason why we wouldn't be able to have these in place by the end of May.
There is a I would be curious about those 600 vehicles during different seasons. The summer is definitely a busier season on some of our roads.
The ideal opportunity would be to try and get out in front of the long weekend.
Any further comments? Councillor Winters?
Thank you. I totally agree with that. I mean, I drove that section of road last weekend. When you come out of Lake Charles, yeah, it does straighten out a bit, but the condition of the road is deplorable with potholes in it. And when you get closer to the Zion Church intersection, you cannot do any more than 60 kilometers an hour when you're heading through Leesenburg Pottery or down the Zion Church Road. It is not comfortable even just driving to the conditions, not trying to speed, just look at your speedometer, and you shouldn't be doing that. So it only makes sense that that be done. Don't know whether this is the appropriate time to ask the question or not, but that road is only 2 years old, a year and a half old. It looks like it's a 40-year-old road that has not been maintained. What are our plans with the surface of Session 24?
So through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, I'll answer it. It's a good question. We're under warranty discussions.
Huge warranty discussions, I hope. Yeah.
After the ice storm, if you haven't been there since the ice storm, there's been a significant increase in the depth and sharpness of the edge of the potholes.
For you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, I've had the great good fortune the last few weeks of doing a significant tour. I don't think there is a road in the north of the township I have not driven along. I didn't drive down Zion Church because it's currently closed, but I think I picked just about the road since the ice storm, during the ice storm. Yes, there are warranty conversations ongoing.
Mayor Carlton?
So one of the speakers at Good Roads was a traffic engineer who's written a book called Killed by a Traffic Engineer. And he would totally support decreasing speeds as a way of ensuring safety on a road.
No further comments? I think it adds consistency to the whole piece up there, right? So it takes in the whole area. So that's good news. And if it's 60, they'll still do 70 anyway, right? So, yes, go ahead now.
To you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, I will add one thing to Kevin's summary. When we dug into this, and Councillor Day, I know that some of the residents have reached out to you on this, and maybe other councillors have been reached out to. The section around the front of Gleasonbrook property, around the corner there, is significant. In fact, Grey County records that as a 50-kilometre-an-hour road, but we can't find the bylaw on which they base that recommendation. I've driven that road, and it'd be hard pushed to do much more than 50 up that section. It's a bit snaky, and so this does clarify and clean up. We couldn't find evidence for the 50 ever having been placed, but at least now we have a consistency to that section.
Further questions? See Ryan is going to stand up there, so okay. We have the recommendation on the floor there, and I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. All right, number 8, updates from members appointed to county council committees and local boards. 8.1 county council. Mayor, would you like to speak to that?
I would, and it's a rather lengthy report because there's been 2 county council meetings and a lot of other things going on since we had our last committee of the whole. So for March 13th, county council, exemplary service awards were presented by Kevin McNabb, the director of paramedic services, to 6 members of Grey County Paramedic Service for 20 years of service each, which was quite exemplary, I think, for them to work that long at a job. Savannah Myers announced that Grey County has once again been named one of the world's smart 21 communities of the year by the Intelligent Communities Forum, and this is the 4th time that the county has received this award since 2017. At the March 27th County Council meeting, Kevin McNabb, again Director of Paramedic Services, provided a presentation on the OSHARE programs and services in partnership with Supportive Outreach Services. And he thanked Colleen Trask-Seaman, the Executive Director of OSHARE, for all the work, support, and ongoing community partnership that OSHARE provides. Ward Matrosovs and Kevin McNabb then presented Colleen with a certificate of appreciation for the organization's support of the SOS program. Colleen summarized the ongoing demand and the success of the program and thanked staff and leadership for all their support. OSHARE provides meals for the SOS community outreach markets in Owen Sound and Hanover, and they provided more than 212,000 meals in 2024. And they've also been providing their space in Owen Sound as the site of the Owen Sound SOS market for 1 year. Following that, Francesca Dobbin, the Executive Director of the United Way Grey Bruce, presented Grey County Director of Paramedic Services, Kevin McNabb, with the 2024 King Charles III Coronation Medal. Totally caught Kevin off guard. He hadn't expected this. And Ms. Dobbin highlighted the ongoing dedication from Mr. McNabb, referring to the success of the SOS program under his leadership. And he was instrumental in getting that program in place and certainly deserves the recognition for that. Following that, Linnea Catalin, Business Enterprise Coordinator for the Business Enterprise Center Summer Company, provided an overview of Summer Company, which is funded by the provincial government, administered by Grey County Business Enterprise Center, and she summarized the success of the program and how students can receive a $3,000 grant towards their business. Students are encouraged to apply for support in creating and implementing a business plan for the summer. Council also received a report on drafted future-ready development standards. The draft standards will help apply to developments of 10 or more homes with the goal of reducing construction emissions and preparing for upcoming changes to the building code. Staff have been engaging the development community and the public on the draft standards, and this project is being undertaken jointly with Dufferin and Wellington counties to create a consistent standard for developers across borders. Council supported the proposed official plan amendment number 23, and this amendment focuses on permitted uses on rural designated land. These amendments will better reflect the goals of Grey County's official plan and the need to balance development with the protection of our natural spaces and agricultural land. Grey County had formed an Urban Roads Exchange Task Force earlier in this council term with the goal of examining the county road network and finding opportunities to make long-term improvements. Urban road transfers are a consideration of Grey County's larger transportation master plan. For Georgian Bluffs, the impact will be that concession 6 in Derby, which is Mennonite Corners south to County Road 16, would be uploaded to the county to become part of the county road network. Council approved a funding model for the transfers, which would include approximately 50 kilometers of roads, primarily in urban areas. And Council also directed staff to move forward with organizing public engagement opportunities for the project. And Council will consider increasing the 2026 budget by $1.2 million later in the year during budget deliberations to cover the costs of these future uploads and downloads. There will be some exchange on some municipalities. And no financial decisions have been made at this time. On the 22nd of March, I attended the politicians meeting in Elmwood, and this day is hosted each year by the Bruce County and Grey County Federations of Agriculture. Much of the focus this year was on the effect or possible effects of tariffs on the agricultural community. Al Massell of Agri-Food Economic Systems gave a very informative presentation on the market outlooks and how it's not so simple as to respond in one area only when so many different areas impact another. So it's vital to be very thorough in determining how to act and react. And I have the slide deck from his presentation, which was shared with everyone if anyone is interested in reading it. There were a lot more presentations from all sectors of the agricultural industry, all speaking to the effects the ongoing trade war and tariffs will have on each of them. It was interesting that dairy goats in particular are not part of the supply management system, and tariffs could potentially close their industry down without government support. Mention was made of migrant workers and their value to our local economy and the impact of local employers for not bringing them in. And as always, I find this day to be very worthwhile attending, very informative, and the 2026 meeting is scheduled for Saturday, March 21st in Elmwood again. And I was at Good Roads Conference last week. One of the sessions I took part in was about recycled aggregate sources and their place in a circular economy, and why it is essential to consider the reuse of aggregate, both asphalt and cement, to meet sustainable infrastructure needs, and how other municipalities are writing the reuse of these materials into their RFPs. As an example, Zurich asks for that there be a minimum of 30% recycled material used in any new construction. It was also noted that 60% of the cost of aggregates is in the transportation, so reuse of these materials on site can provide cost savings. And this raised the question for me of whether we restrict or limit the use of recycled products in our contracts, How does this fit with our climate action plan? And is this something that needs further study? A gentleman by the name of David Zipper spoke about the hidden costs of carb load and how vehicles in North America have become so much larger, and the hidden costs that go with these larger vehicles. Fewer parking spaces was one example. Then a very interesting session with the Ontario Regional Chief, Abram Benedicts. He spoke about key opportunities that exist for collaboration between First Nations and municipalities due to the similarities in services that we both provide. He suggested capacity sharing rather than building, and he then took part in a panel on strengthening Indigenous municipal collaboration with Justin Towndale, the mayor of the city of Cornwall. Some suggested best practices are to own our own mistakes, always follow our duty to consult, and build a relationship that will enable us to work together in the future. I then attended a session on asset management with presentations by staff from Wellington and Huron counties, so close to us. And some key points being to consider what level of service is needed now and what level will be needed in the future, and find a way to balance the level of service with the dollars needed to fund the infrastructure. What is the possibility of failure and what is the consequence of failure? How reliable is our data? How do we collect that data? And is there a standard that is consistently followed, that is measurable and repeatable? Do we have a climate risk assessment completed, and what is the likelihood of an occurrence? The session on rethinking road safety also asked, are we building roads with the assumption that what we have today is what we need in the future? So it gave us lots of things to think about. And I did find the Good Roads Conference this year to be very informative and interesting. And I found it a lot more focused on the roads and infrastructure and not kind of spreading itself thin on other areas. So it was kind of nice to get everything following a central theme. One item that was mentioned in regard to the tariffs is that municipalities should be recording any costs that could be associated with these tariffs as they come into effect, in the event that there is future funding available to offset those tariff costs. And I again attended the Warden's Luncheon last Friday with members of staff. Michael, Niall, and Haley were all there with me. And the focus of the day was centered on economic development, with each municipality doing an exercise in what we would like to see for the future of each municipality. And we were to give ourselves a name, a theme moving forward. So ours was, we were Canada in the miniature. And that was somewhat based on the layout of our township, with the topography of the northern part of the township, and proposing that our development would take place along the Highway 6 corridor and maintain the agricultural lands in the southern part of the township. And then there was also a presentation by EPCOR with some innovative ideas for water and wastewater facilities and funding, or access to funding, and different ways of financing future waste and water and wastewater facilities that might be needed in the township. So all in all, an interesting day, and it's been a busy few weeks. So thank you.
Thanks for that, Mayor Carlton. Yeah, you have been busy as well, stuff to attend there. 8.2 is other boards and committees. Does any member wish to provide updates from appointed committees and boards? Councilor Winters.
I can give a little bit of an update from the Grace Hollow Conservation Authority Board. The tender did come in for the renovation of the building. It came in, of course, as most tenders do, with reasonably within budget, but $200,000 more than what was anticipated, which isn't, you know, and I'm not one for spending money, trust me. But in an old building that was built in 1970 with the unknowns and everything else, I think it was a good proposal that was put in. The CEO is looking at different options. He's still applying for grants that could or could not be available. They applied for a grant for accessibility, and they applied for $126,000 plus or minus for accessibility in the front vestibule. They were given, I think, let's say $13,000. They didn't get the first set of doors approved, but they got the inside doors approved as part of the grant. But through that whole process, the good news of this whole thing is the way that the funding and the loan has been secured. The city of Owen Sound actually stepped up and offered to finance the building addition for the municipalities at a guaranteed interest rate for the duration of the 15 years. They spent a lot of time looking at, and I forget the name of the organization, but there's a municipal organization that will loan funds out, 18 months of organizing and working with them to be told that, sorry, we don't fund conservation authorities. So they went to a bank and the bank said, yeah, we'll give you this rate for 5 years. Then there's the unknown to every lower tier municipality in 5 years. What's your levy going to be? What's the increase? So I think Owen Sound gave a pretty decent rate. Board has given direction to move forward with Owen Sound financing the portion of that addition with the opportunity that it can be paid back in lump sum increments or before the 15 years. So it was a good news story that, you know, they're not going to come back at 5 years and say, hey, your levy's increased because we've renewed a different interest rate. And I believe they have vacated the building or in the process of doing that now. The new location for the staff for the next year will be above the post office in Owen Sound. I believe the board, if I'm not mistaken, we will be meeting at the Grey County Council chambers for the monthly board meetings.
All right, good update. Thanks, Council Winters. Any others?
May I just add one thing while we're on the topic? The Drinking Water Source Protection Committee is honoring the 25th year anniversary of the Walkerton water tragedy and acknowledging, trying to do so very gently without making people go through trauma again, but also noting lessons learned and applied during that time period. And there will be a series of videos forthcoming about the event.
Good. Sounds forward.
I actually have a question for our two on Grey Sauble. I understand that the forest management bylaw is being updated and is the window still open for public input for that particular bylaw? And if so, how can people contribute to that conversation?
Tobin's researching the real answer.
Nick Niles got a
I
comment?
think Niall might.
Yeah, so for you,
More
Deputy Mayor Pringle,
confidence.
forest management bylaw is enforced by the Conservation Authority, but it's actually the county bylaw. It is currently open for consultation. You can get to the consultation site on the county web pages.
May I ask a question then? How is it that folks, is there a link online that people can go to? Or is it a matter of having to send an email to that? And I was interested in this one because the report does cite that several municipalities have different tree preservation bylaws. And so that the county's bylaw has to take those individual bylaws into consideration.
So through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, I can share the details for members that might be listening or watching back in the future. So the bylaw update can be learned about at www.grey.ca/forest-management. There is a public open house on Tuesday, May the 6th this year. It's at the County Admin Buildings on 9th Avenue in Owen Sound. The open house runs between 6 p.m. and 7 p.m. as an information awareness session, and then there is a public meeting being held at 7 p.m. again at the County Admin Buildings. And the public meeting is also going to be live streamed on the grey.ca live stream site. You are also able to, it doesn't look like they have an engage sort of page. It does look like you're able to provide written comments and feedback, and the email address for doing so is forests@grey.ca, and that is open until May the 30th, 2025.
Thank you. And sorry for the confusion. I thought that was a Grey Sauble initiative. Thank you.
Great question. Anything else? Well, I guess I'll be next. And I'm obviously sit on the Southwestern Ontario Isotope Coalition. We've had a couple meetings here in the last month. Great progress is being made in the isotope world. We've doubled our capacity coming out of the Bruce Street Bitter here now from where we were a year ago. We've now split into working groups. There's 3 working groups. I'm part of the municipality working group there right now, and really moving forward with initiatives to better promote the Isotope Coalition and what it involves, better transparency as to what it does, and trying to get to the point where we have manufacturing happening in Canada, and not having to ship it to Germany. With the short lifespan of the isotopes there, it really reduces the window once they get them back. So a great group. I don't know, I would probably think in the whole coalition now, there's probably 40 of us, and it's growing pretty much every day. There's new townships, new counties getting on all the time. So great bunch of people, and another meeting will be here, the one in June, and as the working groups to get going here. We're just really trying to promote what we're trying to do here. So it's a great opportunity to be on that committee. So good bunch. All right, any further? Okay, well, that's good. Unfinished business, we have none. New business, we have none. Notice of motion. Does any member wish to provide a notice of motion of discussion? Councilor Woodard.
I don't as a notice of motion, but I think we need to have a notice of discussion in light of the complaints that we've seen as council's all received about gravel road maintenance. And I do, I understand winter's hard on gravel roads, don't get me wrong, but I think some of what we've experienced could have been prevented with some different proper maintenance. I think we need to have a conversation about that.
Okay, thank you. Noted. All right, anything else? Oh, Mayor Carlton.
So a letter came out this afternoon, and I think it hit the media before it came out about strong mayor powers. And that has just been granted to most of the lower tiers within Grey and Bruce counties. So I think I would like to see something come back in, and the clerk and I kind of spoke earlier because she had also shared it. I got it personally, and then it was shared with the deputy mayor and I. As what does that, how does that impact us at this level? What does it mean? And I think it would be worth some discussion and having in front of all of council.
Can you clarify most of the lower tiers in Grey County? Does that?
I think Chatsworth wasn't included, is my understanding, because they are a council of 5 only. So it was all councils larger than that.
Population too, right? It's population.
Wouldn't necessarily be population, because some of the others, like Blue Mountain, their population grows seasonally, but their full-time isn't.
Yes, Councilor Coburn.
Could we all get a copy of the letter that you received, or is that what you would recommend?
Yeah, that's what I'm recommending, is that that would come forward with some of what does that letter mean, so that that goes out to everybody on council.
Okay. All right, closed session. We have no closed session. We're at adjournment. Council will meet as regularly scheduled on April 15, 2025 at 5 p.m. If there is no further business, I'll now call for an adjournment of the meeting. Recommendation reads that the meeting be adjourned at 7:20 p.m. I need a mover and a seconder. Councilor Day. Councilor Forward. I'll call the vote. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. We're now adjourned.